Hello, everyone. My name is Martha Novak, and I am here today with a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak. We are near the holidays. I don't know when you yourself will be listening to the show because they are archived, but certainly for those of you that are listening live, happy holidays. We're right there. Next week is Christmas, and we're in Hanukkah, so this is all very exciting. Guys, we are going to continue a talk on relationships. I didn't like what I said last week. I didn't like the articles I was quoting from. You know, too often we think of ourselves as women or as men and not as human beings. And I don't like articles that distinguish those things. Actually, I chose them very quickly because I'm working on my book right now and did not think them through as well as I should. So I took that show off the air. I think I've got a better one for you today. I have read through these articles carefully. We're going to talk about intimacy today. And we're also going to talk about emotional abuse, certainly something that bears talking about, although it's not a very pleasant subject. And we're also going to then, if we have time, talk about resilience, which if you're in a relationship like that, you better develop and develop quickly. So we're going to talk about all the confusion around that and exactly what's happening. Okay? Let's do a prayer. Get us all on the same page. Hi, how are you, Miss Cat? Good to hear from you today and see that pretty picture of yours. I'm glad that we're together. All right, here we go. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much for the opportunity to be together, for the opportunity to grow and learn and open ourselves to deeper levels of you as us. We thank you so much for revealing information about relationships to us. And we thank you so much for our dear friends that are listening in, that are saying hello. It means the world that we're all connected in spirit, in soul. And thank you so much, dear God, for this wonderful community that we live in. We are really appreciative of the conscious community and our friends. We thank you so much. And now we surrender knowing anything, for it is you through us that know everything. And we thank you with all our hearts. And so it is. Amen. My dog has, hello, Barbara. I'm so glad that you're here. My dog has chosen to join me today. He's behind me. Therefore, I am not sitting on a pillow because I couldn't put it in the chair. And also, I went to the room next door to get my pillow. And we have a brand new little kitten. We already have some, our fill probably, but I found him yesterday in a restaurant parking lot. And he's so tiny and he's so pitiful. And so we have him in that bedroom and he's found the pillow. So I'm not up high. I just don't have to sit up straight, I guess. Okay, guys. I found an article called 7 Truths About the Link Between Emotional and Sexual Intimacy. This is by sexologist and psychotherapist Christy Overstreet. It's a pretty good article. We'll talk about that. We'll start there. I want to start with a story, though, first of all, which is about a client who came to me a while back. This was a lovely woman. She is lovely. She's no longer a client, although we have certainly remained friends. But you know, you keep in mind that I'm not just here to make people feel good. It's wonderful if I can. But I'm really trying to take us all into deeper levels of who we are, of God, of love, right? And in that, show us how to live in the world too, very discerningly and deliberately and consciously. Okay, So she came to me, not knowing what I did, and she told me about her life. And when I said to her, my dear, I think you're saying that you're very lonely in your marriage and you'd like deeper levels of intimacy. And she said, oh, yes, that's it. Absolutely what I want. Oh, yes. I said, great. So I'm going to have to open all your emotional capacity and really have you feel some things. Oh, no, we're not going to do that, she said. Now, all I'm saying about that funny story, which I do think is hilarious, is that somebody that's really not in touch with themselves. And they don't have a clue what you all are going to learn in just a minute and probably already know. Sometimes I teach you new things, and sometimes my job is to remind you of what you already know. So whatever it is, we're going to start there. Certainly, the more you know about yourself, I want to put this on the table too, not just that silly story. The more you know about yourself and the more you've worked on yourself in some way or another, whether it's a therapist or an energy psychologist like me, or whether it's regular psychology or psychiatry or meditations or whatever you have done will help. As a matter of fact, I say you're going to be doing a lot more. People that find me, I'm usually kind of the last stop for a lot of people. They've worked on themselves a lot, and now they want to open that door and go through it to deeper levels of who they really are as their authentic selves. In that, the more you can learn about emotional intelligence, the more you can be emotionally intelligent, the more you can do some of the exercises that I have suggested, which is like run out an emotion sheet and talk from that emotion sheet, define what your emotions are. You know, it's really easy for us to say we know how to be emotional when we get mad and we say, yes, I'm angry. But no, you're not. Anger is made of 50 components. Which ones are you? Now we're talking about emotional intelligence. Do you see the difference? Emotional intelligence is not just standing under one word like an umbrella. It is actually knowing these definitions, these aspects of ourselves, so we can call them by name and be very precise. I don't want to tell my husband I'm enraged at him if all I am is mildly frustrated because I had an idea in my own head that he's not matching. I want to be able to love him enough to say, listen, here's what I'm doing, and here's what's on the table. We have to be specific to honor ourselves and other people. You understand? And part of that is learning an emotional language, not being afraid of it, and being precise in that. We also want to know about our attachment styles. You've heard me lecture on that before, but if you don't know what we're talking about attachment styles, you better start reading about them because they're very powerful. And what you have the opportunity to do is go from the, let's see if I can remember them all, the fearful avoidant, the anxious preoccupied, the dismissive avoidant, attachment styles, and become the fourth one, the most powerful one, which is the secure attachment style. And that secure attachment style is certainly emotionally mature. Okay? The second thing I think is so important is to know your love language and know someone else's. Not only are these things important that I'm mentioning, they're important certainly in terms of all relationships, but there's so much more you need to know about yourself. If you have not been an investigator of yourself and taken personality quizzes, and I'm not talking about the ones in Cosmo, guys, I'm talking about real personality quizzes like DISC and Myers-Briggs and that kind of thing. And if you have not gotten an accurate read on you concerning those things, it shows not that the test is faulty, but that you don't know yourself very well. and that you need to do so. And that means start learning about yourself. Okay? That's one of the things these shows are set up for. We want you to know yourself in more specific ways. Now, those things said, let's go to this Christy Overstreet article, 7 Truths about the link between emotional and sexual intimacy from a therapist. First of all, she says something that I've said all along, which is, of course, one of the reasons I like this article, which is that intimacy is so much more than taking off your clothes and hopping in bed with somebody and having sex. That is one part of intimacy, but it's one part alone, and oddly enough, it's not the sustaining part. It's the part to have fun with, okay? But all of these kinds of intimacies are combined incredibly sustaining in your relationship. So we're going to talk about that today. Now, the first point she makes here is that intimacy goes beyond sex. Absolutely. But when you say intimacy to someone, one of the first things people think of is sex, right? So I want you all to realize that is a narrow definition. It is a narrow definition of it. It's just one little aspect of it. Like I said, you know, you've got so many aspects of rage or so many aspects of whatever you're feeling. And we need to be more aware of that. She goes on to say with point 2 that there are many types of intimacy. She defines 12 types. I think these 12 types are pretty darn good myself. So I want to put them on the table to you. And I'll tell you, you might want to write this down. I'm going to talk a minute while you go get a pen and paper, because I think that writing these things down, then certainly if you cogitate on these things, you're going to have a sense of what you're doing well and what you're not doing so well in the intimacy department. But these are marvelous. This is a marvelous tool. I'll say too, darlings, because this isn't just about your romantic relationship with someone. This is and your lifetime partner relationship with someone. This is a really close friend too. Everything but the sexual intimacy, perhaps. All right, here we go. 12 types of intimacy. Emotional intimacy. That's what we were just talking about. You better be able to stand there vulnerable, know the other person is not going to hurt you, and to say what you really feel. That's extremely important. Number 2, the one you know about, sexual and physical intimacy. I think she has them both there because, guys, you know, life happens to all of us. We all age. Sex is vitally important when we're procreating. It becomes lots of fun when we are not anymore. And sometimes it wanes a little bit, but touch should not. Do you think? I don't think either. Touch should never wane. Cuddling and being close and holding hands and giving each other kisses as you go by and patting each other on the back. Boy, is that a lovely thing. That's a lovely thing. And certainly that's what friends can do for each other, you know, touch each other. Number 3 is crisis intimacy. You know, she has another one here that is aesthetic intimacy, and I think crisis intimacy and aesthetic intimacy are linked in one way. And here's the way. Let's talk about crisis first, and then when I will come to aesthetic in a minute, but my point will be the same. You don't know really how strong your relationship is until you're in a crisis. Because crisis energy will either show you what has sustained you all along, all of these intimacies. You've got a nice intimacies. You've got a nice bank account built up there that you can ride this storm out with or share this grief with. Or it will break you up. It depends on how well you do everything, you see. So crisis intimacy is one of those incredible things. I read about these stories, you do too, online. We see them in the movies, we see them on television, and they tell you that the crisis is hard and you either go through it or you don't as a couple. I urge you not to wait for the crisis to find out. I urge you to start filling your bank account with real, incredible intimacy in all of these ways, you see? That's extremely important. And then you'll be able to ride out something and trust each other in that very deep way when the hard times come. Number 4, all right, Tuffle, is recreational intimacy. Recreational intimacy. What do you like doing together? Now, this is important. You shouldn't like everything together. I think that is a mistake. You don't want someone who's just like you. You want someone who's got certain philosophical similarities, you know? I think that's rather important, no matter what people call it by name. How they live is important. Michael and I certainly don't use the same language to describe our spirituality, but we're both spiritual people, you know? Recreational intimacy. What do you like to do together? Well, Michael and I are extremely interested in our lake and in our adventures up here in the mountains. We think that's great fun. We love to boat. Michael is even trying to build a little dinghy in the basement, a little sailboat in the basement, which is so exciting. We're very interested in animals. This dear, big-hearted man, you know, was right with me when we scooped up this tiny little kitten yesterday who was in distress. We certainly are interested in the wildlife around here, not just the animals that are in our home. We love our squirrels and birds out on the porch, and we are occasionally visited by a raccoon and a fox. We get so excited when we see a bear, we don't know what to do. We are interested in the rustic look, as you can probably tell by what's around me. We love interesting, fabulous things about the world. We're always getting in the car and going for a road trip to some of the little towns around here. We love to go to fairs and craft shops and see what kind of paintings are there and what kind of art we can find. And we love art. Oh, the list will go on and on. We both love to eat, as you can probably tell. That's recreational intimacy. It shouldn't be the only one, kids. It's a mistake, but you should have some things in common like that. The next one is communication intimacy. And this means speaking to each other. This means communicating. You know, this means, you know, I read on the news this today. It means telling each other things. This is how we learn from each other, you know. I read an article, this came out, I'm terrible at time, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. It was a study on what keeps couples happy and in relationship for a lifetime, both as components. And the thing that they said was what they called novelty. Novelty is that I develop myself, you develop yourself, and we can't wait to talk to each other about the things that we've learned. It makes us both smarter, doesn't it? I think so too. I think it's very exciting. And I think that's really important. And you all should be able to talk to each other. I know my husband is not the talker I am. He's very patient with me. But he is, he knows so much. I'll tell you, I am just awed by what he knows about history and geography and everything. I do crossword puzzles. I'm always stumped on geography. It's like, you know, what little town in oh, I don't know, I've never even heard of the place, you know, did this, and Michael always knows it. Anyway, It's important to communicate that way. Now, I'm going to repeat what I said, though, before, and that is that I don't think that communication is the bottom line problem that I see most often in couples. It is a problem, but the big one that I see is nobody's telling each other the truth. Therefore, they're not communicating. They don't want to speak up. They don't know how to speak up. They may not want to break their own fantasy, you see, of who they are, or who the other person is, or what their family is like. You can have a fantasy family. It's very important, guys. Good morning, Sheila. Oh, Merry Christmas to you too, darling. I'm so glad that you're with us today. So it's a very, very important that everyone tell each other the truth, and therefore then communicate. Certainly, all communication isn't that deep. Sometimes it's just fun communication, you know. There's such a difference in this little kitten that we found yesterday between last night and today. I couldn't wait to take him down there. We don't let him run around the house yet till we get him checked out. But I couldn't wait to show Michael, look at this cat. He looks so different with a good meal or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 in him. There is another kind of intimacy, which is aesthetic intimacy. As the aesthetics are your appreciation of beauty. And I think that is so interesting, but I want to say the same thing about crisis intimacy. These two things have a lot to do with things. I noticed for years that I'd come home and I'd talk about how beautiful certain parts of the south of France were. At one point, I really loved that. Now I love these Appalachians, but at one time, that was really everything to me. I just loved the south of France. And I noticed that my friends would go over there with their husbands or boyfriends on my recommendation. They'd get so charged up too, right? And they'd break up. I actually think that places of great beauty are so intimate to share that you quickly see what's lacking in a relationship. I think places of great beauty do that. That's just my theory. You'll never hear anybody else talk about that probably, but I think that's all the more reason that you develop yourself and you develop, you put all sorts of good intimacies into your relationship. So that is strong. I think aesthetic intimacy is also that you admire some of the same things, you know. Michael and I certainly think animals are beautiful. We love art, you know. That's really fun for us. And it's interesting because while we both have different tastes for art, we always know it's our piece of art if we can both agree on something, you know, because we'll go, whoa, and we'll both go, whoa, and we know that's ours, you know. It's interesting. If one of us just goes, you know, if the other one likes it, it isn't as much of a charge, you know. All right, number 7 is work intimacy. Work intimacy. I think we can become intimate when we work, but we don't have to work together to have this kind of work intimacy. I certainly was extremely interested and very admiring when before Michael retired. He was an executive with a power company in Vienna, and I was so lucky to come into that experience and into his life on the tail end of that, because I saw how much he was respected and admired, and that was a wonderful thing for me to see and to know. It's interesting because I think he sees little parts of me. You know, I was in the theater for a really long time, and in film, and he doesn't know that aspect of me, but when I sing, sometimes with my cousin at the piano or something, he'll go, wow, I I didn't know you could do that. That really sounds good. Or I'm singing on the radio. So that's how he's experiencing mine. It's very cute. The next one is commitment into intimacy. I don't know how you in your relationships want to do that. I can tell you how we did it, and I will. But I think it's really important that if you are going to be in a relationship, that there's a commitment to be there. There's a commitment for me to be there with you in my work if I'm doing sessions on you. There's certainly a commitment that I have to my friends. I want to talk about that for a minute too, because I think it's really important. Years ago, I was not good at commitment energy with intimacy with friends. I had a dear friend who subsequently died, who sat me down and in no uncertain terms said to me what I am going to say to you. And I say this with all my heart. You need to be there for your friends. You don't get to disappear. You don't get to be so involved with work that you don't return a phone call or an email. It's much easier to communicate now, by the way, than years ago when she told me this. And I've since told people this, that if we are in communication with each other, we don't have to talk all the time. I don't believe in that kind of communication. What I do believe in is that we are there for each other. We love each other. We're there. And we might not talk for 2 years, and we take up where we left off. Now that's where you have a good friend. In terms of an intimate relationship, my husband and I noticed something odd. Now, you may not notice this. It's fine if you don't. But I think Michael coming from Vienna, I think me being an Atlanta person, when we married, I think we were not committed to anything because we didn't know what anything was going to be, right? He didn't know whether he had never lived in the United States. He had been here. But we just didn't. It wasn't that we weren't committed. We were committed to each other, by the way, or we wouldn't have been married. But our life together, So we noticed, he's very sensitive to energy too. We noticed that when we actually married and we went to the hotel downtown for that one night, we looked at each other and we went, wow, the floor has dropped away and we're on a much deeper level of us. It was something about writing our vows, saying them in front of everybody, and it really changed us. We made a deeper commitment to make this work no matter what. And it was a very precious moment I'll never forget. That's what it did for me. And I think that, and I know that's what it did for Michael too, because he's the one that brought it up. Wasn't that great? It was beautiful. There's another kind of intimacy, which is number 9, and that is creative intimacy. Creative intimacy. I love creative intimacy. First of all, I love creativity. Creativity is one of my values. I'm really creative. It's just part of who I am. Always have been. But I have married a man who is creative as well. And while he's an engineer, man, his brain he knows on some incredibly intuitive, smart, brilliant level what works and what doesn't. And I'm going to tell you that I hope you'll read my book when it comes out. It'll be a while. But he has given me some of the best ideas. He'll read something, and even though this isn't his kind of thing, he'll say to me, well, have you tried this? What do you think about that? What if we do this? And it's just amazing. I mean, it really is. It sometimes just transforms everything. It's just marvelous. And that is so meaningful to me. I certainly like to make a good home for him, and I like to cook creative meals when I'm not, by the way, when I'm not working on the book. He's eaten nothing but hot dogs and hamburgers for a while. But it's I try to be creative for him different ways, because I don't know how to help him build his boat. I don't know how to do that, but I'll do it my way and certainly help. Number 10 is conflict intimacy. Isn't that something? Related to crisis energy, I guess. Conflict intimacy. And I'll say again, as I said about crisis anesthetic, I'll say about I'll say about conflict, you better have a good bank account built up of intimacy when you hit conflict. Certainly, I think before you commit to somebody, you have to learn to work through problems. You need to learn to get to a solution. And you're not finished with working through the problem until you love the other person more. You do not sweep your conflicts under the rug. If you do, in another 10 or 15 years, you're going to have a pile under that rug, and everything's going to be ancient history, and nothing's going to be able to be called by name, and there's not going to be anything you can do about it. You will either have to live and settle with that in your energy, or you're going to have to divorce at that time, or you're just going to have some sort of divine revelation and forgive everything and have them forgive you and start over. That's very hard to do. Better to realize the problem as it comes, not be afraid of it, with a big old heart, and sometimes in argument, you open up and you become aware of the problem, and you work through it, and you get to a solution, and you love each other and have more of an appreciation after the argument than you did before. You see, all arguments are, about trapped love that cannot be itself, because in my philosophy, everything is love. Your rage, that's love. It's just love that you learned couldn't be love. So you've turned it into something else. Everything, every emotion in the book is love. That's why it's kind of like an ice cube, right? Everything can turn into love because it was first love to begin with. Ice is just water to begin with. Water that has not allowed it to be what it is, right? See? So it turned into ice, can turn back into water. Love's the same way. So we have to learn. Nobody really comes into their adulthood knowing how to handle conflict. But what you do is don't go back in the past and live there. You stay in the moment. You find out what the problem is. You listen to both sides. You see how you can meet both needs. Right? You find a solution that everybody agrees to, and you go on with a happy life. A lot of times, people who are avoidant of their emotions, a lot of times people who deny themselves and are rather harsh to themselves, these people, it's the interesting thing, don't even know they're upset. But you get several of those things happening over a period of time. 4 or 5 things build up in a day, and all of a sudden you got a big explosion. And it's a huge overreaction, and nobody knows where it came from, not even you. Well, you didn't notice these little things that bother you and handle them as you went. That's important to do, and that's a really, really good piece of advice for you, I promise. Learn to know. Be in tune with yourself. Wait a minute, I'm really bothered here. I'm bothered here. What am I bothered about? I'm feeling strange, a little anxiety. What is that? Ask yourself, find out, talk to your partner, work it out. Number 11 is spiritual intimacy. I think a lot of people get this a little confused. I have clients that are, oh, hello, Fabiola. Hi, darling. Oh, I'm so glad that you're here today. Thank you so much for being in. Happy holidays. Okay. Have a good one, all of you. Put something under the tree from me to you, please. How's that? Now, back to spiritual intimacy. People that I know who are looking for partners and who are doing this kind of work often will read the profiles if they're online trying to, find a partner, and they'll go, oh, this guy, oh, he sounds so wonderful, oh. And his idea of spirituality when they meet is real different, right? I want to say, throw the idea that you're ever going to find a match to that in words out. What you're looking for is a good person. You're looking for a good person. Someone that thrills you when they walk in the room. Someone you can't wait to get back to and tell about your day and hear about his or hers. And this is what happens. Guys, thank you, sweetie, for that. Oh, yeah. Oh, great. Thank you. That's wonderful, Fabiola. Please do. But give yourself a present, okay? From me. Oh, hi, Lisa. How are you, my darling? I know. Our friend Lisa, and I hope it's all right for me to say this, just lost her husband, guys, 2 days ago. And I want you to keep her in your prayers, please. Let's all do that. We'll keep our Lisa in prayer and lift her up, because that's as hard as anything I know in life. We love you, sweetie. Got lots of friends that you don't even know about. Okay. So, spiritual intimacy. So you're looking for a good person. I don't mean to just bring everything back to me, but these are examples, and I've got some good ones. Michael's an engineer. He's from a different culture, Austria. I'm doing consciousness work. He never heard of consciousness work, but let me tell you, I couldn't find a better man. He's a fine man. He lives his goodness. Now, that's what you're looking for. Don't get hung up on the words, kids. You understand what I'm saying? All of a sudden, my Blog Talk Radio has disappeared from my screen. There we are. Now we're back, kind of in a way. Well, anyway, I hope that we're still on Blog Talk Radio. I don't know. That's spiritual intimacy. Spiritual intimacy is not using the same words. But do you live with love? Are you a contributor? Are you a generous soul? Do you love that the other person is thrilled about something or happy for them? Do you chip in whenever you need to? Who are you? Find someone who is like you in those aspects, not necessarily the words you say, I feel honestly the same way about politics. I know that's a hot subject, but who cares what somebody else believes? They are entitled to their belief. Aren't there a lot of other reasons to love somebody? Don't narrow our minds. Let's not. Let's do what we think is right and allow the other person to do what they think is right and just go on with a wonderful life. And the final intimacy is intellectual intimacy. I think that's important, guys. I think it's very important that you all are able to discuss what you're interested in discussing, that you are mentally stimulated by something, you know? It's growth, isn't it? You know, there's several parts to growth. Can I talk about that for a minute? Now, this is not her thing. You know me, I'm going to launch off into mine. There are two parts to, let's even say, seeing a project through. The first part is to be mentally stimulated, right? Oh, this is so interesting. This subject, this boat building, or this book writing, or this whatever. This is so interesting. But to follow through, guess what you have to have? You have to have passion. And passion lies in your emotional response and your emotional intelligence. You've got lots of intelligences. It's not just mental. You've got mental intelligence, emotional intelligence. You've got physical intelligence too. Michael's much better at physical intelligence than I am. But I do just enough. We'll go for a walk together with the dog. You all have got to find things interesting together. Not everything. Not everything. Again, I think we'd be bored very quickly if we married somebody just exactly like us. There's got to be enough differences to make life interesting and intriguing, passionate, right? Okay. All right. She goes on to say, emotional intimacy is being able to share your feelings. She said there's a connection between emotional and sexual intimacy. And by the way, there is. Let's hear what she has to say, and then I'll add my 2 cents. Emotional intimacy is being able to share your feelings. Yes, being emotionally intimate with another person means being vulnerable and knowing that you're not going to be hurt by them. That's very important. Are you safe with them? This ability to share your emotions, your outlook, your feelings, grows your connection as a couple and deepens you through the years. This is why, even if your language isn't words like mine, it's very important to make an effort in that direction if we're going to have a relationship, right? You see? And I certainly make an effort in your direction. That's how we deepen. That's how we grow. It isn't all about us anymore when we become partners, whether we're friend partners or whether we are intimate partners in a companion sense or a romance sense. We got to grow. It's got to deepen. Good. Now, sexual intimacy, she goes on to say, is being able to connect sexually with your partner in an emotional and physically safe way. Sexual intimacy improves when two people can openly discuss their needs, wants, or desires, and they create a safe place where both individuals can communicate their physical and sexual needs without being judged. I do want to say that why would you partner with anybody if you find out in the dating experience that you can't talk about certain subjects with them? That's a big red flag for me. You want to be able to talk about everything. It may be hard, but sometimes the best things in life, the most valuable things, are hard. You want to have someone you can talk to about everything. Sex is one of those things that is usually talked about with a partner, an intimate. So make sure you can talk about lots of things with them. When you get your emotional needs met and feel emotionally connected to your partner, that is, when you have emotional intimacy, then you're much more able and willing to connect sexually. And that's true. I particularly think, now, here I am being sexist again, but I am going to say I think that's particularly true for women. And this may be very unfair for me to say, forgive me, but I know that in my relationship with Michael, it's extremely important for me to feel these deep levels of caring, and when I feel really cared about, that's certainly important to me, and I enjoy certainly the physical act certainly more. It bolsters sexual intimacy, absolutely. I haven't talked to Michael about that. I don't know whether that's true for him, but I would imagine it's true for him to a certain extent, and maybe as much as it is for me. Number 4, it's important to recognize that there are different definitions of intimacy within a relationship. By the way, guys, that's not a deal breaker. You just should know about it, right? People see intimacy differently because we have experienced life differently, right? Our past behaviors, our past experience, our past relationships have all taught us, and they are lenses through which we view relationships. All these affect intimacy, and we need to talk about it, okay? We need to see what that means. For example, she gives an example here, so let's give you the examples, which will, explain it even more. You may want to connect with them by spending time alone where you can both talk and relax, right? On the other hand, your partner wants to connect with you equally, but they see sex as having a way to get close to you. There's nothing wrong with that, but we need to talk about that, and we make sure that everybody's needs are met, okay? If Michael is the latter, I'm just making this up, but if Michael is the latter, then I don't even have to wait for him to wake up to cuddle with me. I'm going to cozy up to him and give him big hugs and kisses, or sit there and hold his hand while we're watching a movie or something on television. It's up to all of us to say or express what we need, and certainly to be generous with what the other person needs as well. In my opinion, we both get what we want if we're aware. You see, in consciousness, you should both get what you want. Because if somebody does not, what happens? Resentment happens. And that's always the undertow that's going to pull a marriage apart, a partnership apart. All right. So she goes on to finish that thought with, both of you want intimacy, but it looks different. Neither of you is wrong in how you see intimacy, how you express it, but you do have different intimate needs that you need to talk about. Okay. It's wonderful to do that because, I've said all along, there are two things that you fight about. You all can repeat that back to me, I know, in spades, but here it is. You don't care about me, and I never get what I want, right? So when you meet another person's intimacy needs, isn't that wonderful to show how much you care and how much you are committed to them? I think it's beautiful. I really do. That's what I mean, that, the most successful partnerships are the ones where everybody's a contributor. Just jump in there, roll up your sleeves. Good. Number 5 is it's important for you to know your emotional and sexual intimacy needs. That seems obvious. It's not. Hang on. It's not obvious. The reason is that people just simply don't know themselves very well. I happen to think that the Myers-Briggs test is a very good test. Do you know it's got, the last time I saw, a 45 to 55% accuracy rating. It's not the test that's faulty. It's how people answer the questions. If they don't know themselves very well, my dears, that test is not going to read accurately. It's very important that you know yourself. What is your love language? What are your attachment styles? What are you working on that's going to get you to the secure attachment? What's your Myers-Briggs? What's your DISC? Who are you? The more you know, and we haven't even gotten to the consciousness part of you yet, right? The more you know, the more you are going to be successful in a relationship. You need to know. You need to have a degree of introspection, and knowing yourself is required. You know, the Oracle of Delphi was right, you know, over the doorway it says, know yourself. That's right. What are your turn-offs? What are your turn-ons? Who are you? You know, in all of these aspects that we've named of intimacy. In all of them. In all of them. We assume that we know each other. All of us do, especially partners. And I do have to tell you something wonderful. I've in my life, and I've seen this with Michael too, but I remember my dad who got very, very ill. And my mother and I had to do some legal work with our lawyer, who was a very close friend of ours. So I took her to his office, right? And and she sat at the head of this long boardroom table, and she started conducting business. This was unbelievable. She was in her 80s. She was as clear-headed and sharp and definitive, and I saw her as somebody, oh my God, I'd never seen before. This is somebody who could have headed a corporation had she chosen to do so. Oh, darlings, there is the spark of greatness in every human being, whatever kind of greatness it is. And we just must not be so arrogant that we think we know everything about everybody. How fun to see something like that. I remember getting up from that table and walking out and saying, you blew me away. And you're my mom. You know, what is this? This was just incredible. How exciting. How marvelous to have the opportunity to see those aspects of each other. Powerful stuff. Oh, Minette, my cousin. Hello, darling. Hey, and Merry Christmas to you too, darling. I'm so glad to see you. Please give my love to Jeannie, okay? I love you very much. Oh, I'm so glad that to have the opportunity for us to be together. I've been meaning to call you a million times over. I hope you're doing well. It was so fun hosting you all last year before the COVID thing. Okay. Well, all right. Number 6. Here's our next point. There's a connection between trust and intimacy. And how, ladies and gentlemen, isn't there? Now, you heard me talk about trust a couple of weeks ago. Trust is one of those things that is not an umbrella. I stand under trust. Of course I trust you. Yes. Well, let me tell you, there are times that all of us aren't trustworthy. When I'm tired, I want my husband in the car saying, you see that car up there that's already stopped? And I would hope, even though he grouches about it, that he would want me to do the same thing. Because, guys, we're not trustworthy all the time. For fatigue, because we don't have all the information, because we've never had this experience. Come on, guys. We're in this together, and a great partnership helps each other that way, right? You know, that to me is a very practical form of trust. Listen, if I didn't know someone's character, if I didn't know Michael Novak's character, I wouldn't be married to him. Of course I trust who he basically is. But I don't trust his driving if he hadn't had any sleep or he's tired. And he shouldn't trust mine either, by the way. I'm a much worse driver. She goes on to say, trust is feeling safe with your partner and confident that they'll treat you well. Well, that is a form, and absolutely we can rely on that. That they'll keep their promises. I'm going to add that they'll tell us the truth, and that we'll tell them the truth, and that they care for the relationship. You know, I think there are a lot of people who have married partners, and their partners are, especially people that are in, you know, some sort of consciousness work, they marry people that don't take very good care of themselves. I'm thinking particularly of a woman that I know, a dear friend of mine, who's married a man that eats like crap, and he's already had a heart attack. Now, what do you do with that? First of all, I don't think that's a deal breaker. Second of all, I think you can say how you feel about it. Third of all, I don't think you can nag about it, because if he continues to do that, that's his business, and he's telling you very loudly and clearly he's not going to do it. But here's a deeper level of that. I want everybody who's listening to this show to wake up to the fact that we all have a responsibility to be here as long as we can, take care of ourselves, preserve what we've got. If that means taking your vitamins, oh, please do. That means eating right, oh, please do. We can't live like we're 16, guys. We're not 16 anymore, speaking for myself. Some of you may be 16. You're going to write in and say, well, I am 16. Well, have fun, okay? But, guys, at some point, our bodies start telling us how we need to take better care of ourselves. Just the way it is. So I hope that all of you that are in partnership, man or woman, will wake up to the fact that we do have a responsibility to hold up our end of that in whatever way we need to do. We need to be as healthy as possible. We need to go to the doctor when there's a problem. Okay? Please do. Okay. She goes on to say that when intimacy, connection, real connection with each other improves, trust also improves. Trust and intimacy do move in tandem. They do. When one is down, so is the other. You can't have one without the other. And I believe that's true. When you trust in your partner, things do change. Your connection deepens with them, both emotionally and sexually. But when there's a decrease in trust, your emotional and sexual intimacy decreases. I think this is such an important thing to talk about with partners. You know, just as I talked about my dear friend who doesn't like the way her husband eats. She had, and she's spoken up, I'm sure, knowing my darling friend, she's spoken up more than once. That's all she can do. And then you have to be at peace. There are other things to trust, you say. That people are good people. That people will be kind to you. That people are contributory in all sorts of ways. There are other things to admire. There are so many things to admire about everybody. But you don't have to admire the same things all the time. Sometimes we let ourselves down. That's just the way it is. It's part of being human, isn't it? Number 7, Improving trust improves intimacy. Yep. She says, that means working on building trust in a relationship is a key part to fostering more intimacy between partners. And I think that's true. Now, she says that trust moves up and down a scale to 0 to 10 throughout the day, and maybe that's true. I'm not really sure that's true for us. But I will say this about trust. What I have seen for years as a real problem in relationships is that partners don't mean to. I don't think this is intentional, unless it is, by the way. We'll talk about that in a minute when we talk about abuse. But partners can say things to each other and make the other person feel unsafe. When you speak to each other that way and you introduce unsafety, what would make you feel unsafe? I'll tell you what makes you feel unsafe, unless you are a real strong person, and that is if somebody calls you dumb. If somebody says one of your ideas is stupid, your idea isn't stupid. You had a reason for doing this. It may not be the ultimate great reason, but it doesn't mean your idea is stupid. Now, I find that kind of language abusive. We'll talk about abuse in just a minute. That erodes safety. A demand erodes safety. I'll tell you something that happened in our marriage. Here you go. I've been entertaining for a long time. I'm a pretty good entertainer. I can pull a dinner party together. I can pull a big party together. Certainly not in COVID, guys. But I'm good at that, right? And because I've been doing this so long, and because I've been doing this a long time by myself as well, when Michael joined me, one of the things that he didn't understand is me barking orders at him, you know. We need to do that, do that, do that, do that, do that. And he got real upset with me for several times when he finally told me, I don't like these demands. You're making demands. Well, you know what? In my mind, I wasn't making demands. I was just trying to be efficient. I really was. There was no demand about it. If he had a better idea, he could. I was just putting on the table what we needed to do and what I needed him to do to help me, because I didn't think he saw it. It was not intentional to be demanding. Now, this is what I mean. If you've got a partner that can't say that to you, and that can't say, and so what do I do about it now? When we are giving something, not that we're giving something that often, I am very careful about the way I ask for him to help me. I am very respectful, because he's got his agenda too. And I try to be. And if he sees me crossing the line and being unconscious about that, he'll say, Martha, you're doing it again. There's a demand. It's like, I'm so sorry. Okay, let me back up and say this. You see? So guys, in a million ways, throughout the day, without some degree of consciousness, without some degree of truth-telling and communication, we're making the environment unsafe. It feels unsafe to our partners. We have to have them tell you that, and you have to be able to speak up and tell someone else that as well. Because trust will go away. Your intimacy will go away when you feel unsafe. Two things happen in a marriage when you feel unsafe. Sex goes away, by the way, and creativity goes away. Those are the two elements that will go first of the intimacies. So it's very important that we feel safe. All right. That was that article. I thought it was a pretty good one. How much time do we have left? We have half an hour. I think we ought to go into what an emotional abusive relationship is like. We all understand a physically abusive relationship. If you're in one, you better get the hell out. That's what I say. And you better get some help to do so. We want to keep you safe. But emotional abuse is something much more subtle. Let's talk about that. I think it's really important. Okay? This article is entitled 13 Signs Your Partner is Emotionally Abusive. And it's by, let's see, there are all sorts of experts that contributed to this article. Kimberly Hershenson, therapist; Rhonda Milrad, therapist; Takara Martin, what a pretty name, huh? Relationship expert; Davida Rappaport, counselor; and Dr. Josh Klapow, who's a clinical psychologist. I thought this was a pretty good article, too. And it's something that we don't talk a lot about, because a lot of really conscious people would not be in a relationship like this to begin with. However, I will say these things sneak into relationships. So if we're talking about let's clean up the relationship so everybody can feel safe, these are the ways that people don't feel safe. Okay? Here they are. So recognizing the subtle signs your partner is emotionally abusive isn't always easy, the article says. Everyone, he calls it, everyone wears rose-colored glasses when they're in love, and it can make it difficult to spot ongoing problems. I'm going to call it plain out fantasy. You can be in fantasy. You can be so loved because you are overcompensating for feeling so insecure that you're just not going to see what's going to do you in the end. So you guys better wake up, because you need to see what you've got. And you need to see what you're buying. This is one of the most important decisions of your life. So don't treat it lightly, okay? I particularly talk about you young people, but I'm really not just talking about youth. I'm talking about everybody. I think youth is difficult because we have those hormones saying procreate, procreate, procreate. But I think that in our seniorhoods, it is difficult too, because we so want to complete the love that we are by giving it to someone else and receiving it, that there can be a drive that to accept people that are not good partners. So let's wake up here as we talk about this article. They go on to say, that there are all sorts of manipulations like gaslighting, we'll talk about that, which can really really confuse you. You know, the more you know yourself, the better you're going to do a partnership, and the more you'll recognize when somebody steps over the line, at which time, if they're the right kind of person, you say, get your toe back over the line. This is not good for the relationship. This is not, these are not Martha's rules. These are the rules of a good relationship. All over the internet, do your own research. These are the rules of a good relationship. So, there is a New York City-based therapist, Kimberly Hershenson. This interview was for a website called Bustle, which I've never heard of before, but that's me being ignorant. This Dr. Hershenson says, if you're wondering, is my partner emotionally abusive, consider your first hint that something isn't, your first hint that something isn't right. And then she says, keep digging. There's often a lot of unfairness and inequality to be found in relationships like this. And the more aware you are of these things, the better. So if your partner is emotionally abusing you over time, you're going to start to experience lowered self-esteem, anxiety, and even depression. And this is why it's important to talk about these things right away. And this is important to talk about these things with your partner right away. And guys, one of the things that I think you ought to discover when you're dating somebody before it ever gets terribly serious is if they are doing any of these things, number one, and then number two, will they correct them? And will you correct them, by the way? You see? We've got to wake up. Can somebody work through a problem? That's what I'd want to know. Okay. So there might be times you have to approach your partner and point out what you've noticed and see if it's possible to establish better boundaries, healthier communication, and much more. So while I am saying this is true for dating situations, there's no reason in the world that this can't be true even if you've been in partnership for quite a while. But I want you to keep in mind that if someone is toxic and manipulative, they probably are not going to be able to change. Personality disorders are coming in, and there usually is a nice little web of them to keep people right where they are. I often find that pot does that too. If you're with a partner that's smoking a lot of pot, they have no impetus to change in many cases. Oh, they can talk a really good game. I know several people that are, into the healing arts, but they're pot smokers. Their relationships are pretty bad because they're not moving, they're not deepening, they're not growing. That drug allows them to stay right where they are. Fooling themselves, by the way. Okay. Abusive partners often seek control, but many will try to be sneaky about it. So number one way to spot somebody is they'll tell you, now this is what they brought up on the table. They'll tell you what to wear, or they'll edit your phone calls. I'm just giving you some examples of things that I've seen. They seek control, but often are pretty sneaky about it. For example, they might say, I don't want you to wear that tight dress because, my men friends will look at you, or you'll be bothered by people, or you shouldn't wear that skirt because it just doesn't look good on you. Okay. Whether your partner implicitly or explicitly attempts to make decisions for you, even if it's just something simple like what you are wearing, Hershenson says that it still counts as emotional abusive behavior. Now, here's what's interesting about that I've found. I've found some men and women who are enormously dependent on other people, pathologically so, unhealthily so, like that up to a certain point. They're attracted to somebody telling them everything because they don't think they can make decisions for themselves. But the normal condition is that people tend to grow. And if you think that behavior goes down well after 10 years, I'm going to tell you right now, it will not if you last that long in a partnership with somebody like that, okay? It's up to you to know whether you look good or not. It's up to you to know what you're saying. It's up to you to be deliberate and conscious with everything. Nobody has the right to control you. You get to live and to die the way you choose. So do I. Would you want anybody to interfere with that for you? I wouldn't want anybody to interfere with that for me. And therefore, as much as I love my sweet partner, I cannot interfere with that for him. And he can't do that for me either. We have to be our own whole people. Number two, these therapists say the partner is selfish in bed. All right. They go on to say, in a healthy partnership, sex is all about mutual satisfaction. That doesn't necessarily mean both partners orgasm every time and at the same time. It means that they're both giving and receiving intimacy and pleasure during sex. Yes, I agree with that. But you really need to know your partner this way. You need to know what their philosophy is about sex, what their appetites are, how adventurous they are, how kinky they are, if you are wondering. You better find those things out and much more. Again, how do you find that out? Well, one of the things you do is you tell the truth and you talk about it. If your partner, they go on to say, is consistently selfish in bed in any way, it's a red flag as far as they're concerned. Whether it's guilt tripping you into having sex, by the way, when you don't want to, or ignoring your need for pleasure or to be left alone, not meeting your needs sexually is emotionally abusive. Not being kind to each other, whether it's sex or not, I gotta tell you, I think it's emotionally abusive. Number 3, they blame you for their actions. This is a common one. There are families that blame each other all the time, but that's not the person taking accountability for the actions, and sometimes the blame can be ludicrous, as you well know. You might notice that whenever your partner gets angry, they immediately blame you for making them act that way. They may also claim that arguments are always your fault, and they wouldn't happen if you didn't act a certain way. But the truth is, here's the bottom line, it's emotional abuse. That's abusive. There should be no blame at all in a relationship. If, I did something the other day, what was it? It was something about my car, wasn't it? And Michael was so kind about that. There was no blame that I did something to the car. He just said, let's switch cars and I'll go fix it. Wasn't that kind? I do think that is enormously kind. All right. And by the way, the only reason I didn't take the car in was that I was having to go somewhere. Okay. The next one, they make you feel confused. Guys, I am going to tell you right now that the more you have studied consciousness, the clearer you become emotionally, the less you're ever going to be confused. I think confusion's an issue, quite frankly. I don't think confusion is a natural state of being. I think it's pretty much an issue. I think that you invite confusion in when you have a lot of conflict in your emotional body. For example, they go on to say gaslighting is a form of psychological abuse in which one partner twists the information or lies in order to make their victim doubt their own memory and sanity. It's confusing, stressful, and upsetting to deal with. Your confidence and self-esteem is eroded, and you end up feeling that you can no longer trust your own thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. That's Rhonda Milred's addition there. Well, I think that's probably true. I think that's absolutely true. But when I say confusion is your issue, if you can't stand there and say, here's this part that's true, it's just that part, and the rest, my dear, is total bull, then you're not clear. So we've got to get you to the place where you have some emotional clarity about this. You understand? It's very important, because you confuse yourself by going, oh, but I love this asshole, right? Oh, and yet, oh, it's a dithering. And guys, You are responsible for getting clear and not dithering, and knowing the lay of the land and facing things as they are. That's emotional maturity. Okay? I'm a little off their script, but I have to put my 2 cents worth in. Gotta tell you. The next one is they compare you to others. If your partner compares you to others, like a coworker or their ex, take note, especially if you tell them to stop and they keep doing it. In an emotionally abusive relationship, you're constantly being compared to others and end up feeling you are not good enough and not lovable. You hear about the great qualities or accomplishments of others, and the underlying message, whether it is subtle or overt, is you're not good enough. You don't match up. That's abusive. Like gaslighting, these comments are meant to eat away at your self-esteem so that you become insecure. If you're already insecure when you go into that relationship, look out. You're set up. You understand that? So I can't tell you how important it is to work on yourself so you are secure. You are the secure attachment style. You don't need this abusive bozo. You got to know that about yourself. You got to be able to stay or leave, whichever one helps your growth. Don't you understand? Insecure people are much easier to manipulate, which is, of course, their goal if you've got an abusive person that you're with. And guys, this has nothing to do with gender. There are just as many abusive women out there as there are abusive men. It's just the way it is. All right. Abusive people say you're too sensitive. Oh, that's a great excuse for their bad behavior, don't you think? You should be able to approach your partner to talk about problems, point out things that aren't working in your relationship, and then have constructive conversations about boundaries and tendencies and predilections and what you need. But this will never happen if your partner is emotionally abusive. When you express your unhappiness about their behavior and you try to hold them accountable, they're going to wiggle away like Mercury, you know? They're going to say, you're too sensitive. You're overreacting. You can't take a joke. You're too insecure. Come on. They're justifying their bad behavior by making your reaction the problem. Guys, one of the nicest things I think about a mature person is they're accountable for their action. It makes me love them more when they say, I did it. Sure did. I've said to Michael over and over again, if I do something, you don't have to fuss at me because I'm too busy fussing at myself. It's part of our emotional maturity. But see, if we think that we are, if we are not good enough, if we're bad, and we're going to talk about shame at some point, but if we think we're bad, or if we're not good enough, you're already going into this relationship shamed. And when they pick on that, and they make you more ashamed, even if it's not true, you're going to buy it. And that's inappropriate. Inappropriate. Okay. Moving right along. They don't let you, the next one, they don't let you have alone time. Guys, you know, I'm an introvert, so you've really got somebody who can talk about this. But I got to tell you, I got to have alone space. Michael's an introvert, too. He's got to have alone space. You know, the whole introvert and extrovert thing, is built on a sound principle, but not many people know that principle, and that is that introverts get their energy from being alone and recharging in their aloneness, and extroverts get their energy from other people. And it's interesting because if you're really entrenched in these two groups, sometimes you really don't understand the other person. And Michael and I are lucky because we're both introverts. We need time alone. We give each other space. Absolutely, we need to do that to recharge. But I am going to tell you right now that if you're an introvert married to an extrovert or the other way around, you all better find an understanding with each other. And you better learn, if you're the extrovert, how to entertain yourself. Because that partner is not going to be there. And there's nothing wrong with the partner. It's just the way they are. Guys, I'm looking at the time. Okay. For some reason, I'm not sure whether I'm on Blog Talk Radio or not, quite frankly. So I'm not sure if it's still going. So I'm having to look at the clock up there. Oh, yeah, it is on. Stream left. 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Wow. Oh, I'm at the end of the show. I had no idea. This clock is wrong. All right. So it's important to have space in a relationship. You have to recharge. You have to pursue separate interests and hobbies. Nice when you share what you've learned. The key here is to feel comfortable enough to spend time with this person while being free to express your boundaries and need for outlets outside that person. And I say yes, absolutely. Guys, I'm going to stop right there. So when we come back, and by the way, we're not coming back for 2 weeks because of Christmas and New Year's, okay? But on whatever that first week in January is, after January 4th, whatever the next time is, I'll be here and we'll be finishing this talk and talking about a lot more as well. Dears, take care of yourself. Have wonderful holidays. Don't forget to put something under the tree for you from me. You know, I remember years ago, I had I was watching an old show and Zsa Zsa Gabor was on, and she was dripping with diamonds, right? And it was so cute because the host, whoever this was, said to her, did your last husband buy, thank you, Sheila, happy holidays to you too. This host said, did your last husband buy that huge honker of a diamond that's on your hand? She says, oh no, darling, the best jewelry I bought for myself. I think that's very cute. The truth is, you should do some nice things for yourself. You all are brave, wonderful people, and you all have this spark of God right there inside of you. It's your potential. You're making the most of it. Go, for heaven's sakes. And thank you for listening to this show. If you have enjoyed this show or any of the other ones, please do. Put it out on social media. Tell your friends about our show. We're trying to grow our community. And by the way, you're the front lines, and you're doing a beautiful job of that. Thank you so much. I wish you the happiest holidays ever and the happiest new year. Let's make it a wonderful one for all of us, okay? Add that love that you are to this world. That's what I wish for you, and that you have it returned and returned and returned. God bless you all. Take good care of yourself. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Yay! Bye-bye.